Chapter 23. Dodging Spies. For a few moments, Nancy sat in stunned silence. Then quickly she showed the telegram to her father, and in a whisper cautioned him not to read it aloud. "Mrs. Flanders mustn't see it," she said hurriedly. "You're right," her father replied in a low voice. "This is dreadful news." Trying not to show her agitation, Nancy helped Mrs. Flanders from the plane. The woman looked around in a dazed fashion. For a moment, Nancy was fearful that Mrs. Flanders might suffer a mental relapse. But suddenly, the ex-circus performer smiled and said, "To think that I am back in the USA! Oh, it doesn't seem possible that in a little while I'll see my daughter again." "We'll have to find out where she is," said Nancy gently. "I don't know where the circus is right now." Mrs. Flanders was trembling with excitement. When Mr. Drew went to claim their baggage, Nancy suggested that she sit down and relax. She led Mrs. Flanders to the women's lounge and asked the matron if she would please look after her for a few minutes. The kindly woman promised to do so. "Please don't let her out of here," Nancy requested. "Don't you worry, miss," the matron said. "I'll guard her as if she were my own mother." Nancy hurried off to find her father. At the baggage desk, she said to him in a low voice, "Dad, I've just come to the conclusion that the telegram is a hoax. Nobody in the States knew when we were flying back." "It's just possible," said Mr. Drew, "that the doctor who attended Lola Flanders may have visited the nursing home and found out that she had left for the States. He could have cabled Croon." Nancy decided that the only way to settle the matter was to call Bess's home. Going at once to the telephone booth, she placed the call. Bess herself answered. "Where are you?" she asked Nancy. "New York City. I just landed. Bess, did you send me a telegram?" "Why, no," Bess replied in surprise. "What made you think I had?" Nancy told her that someone had signed her name to a very unfortunate message. Then she asked if Bess had heard from Lolita recently. "Why, yes. I just spoke to Erica. Lolita is fine. Why do you want to know?" Nancy told her about the latest developments. Bess gasped, first in horror that anyone could be so cruel as to send such a message, and then in delight to hear that Lolita's mother had been found. "Where is the circus playing?" Nancy asked. "It's moving to Melville tonight. They'll be there for 3 days. That's why Erica called me. She wanted to know if there was any news of Pietro." Quickly, Nancy gave Bess the other details of the trip and concluded by saying that Pietro wanted to return to the circus as soon as possible and marry Lolita. "When Erica calls again, will you please give Lolita his message?" Returning to her father, who had just received their baggage, Nancy told him the latest turn of events. Mr. Drew became grave. "One thing is sure. We are being spied upon. We'll probably be followed. I suggest that we lead our pursuers a merry chase and throw them off the track." Nancy was agreeable to the suggestion. Suddenly an idea came to her. "I heard an announcement a few minutes ago that a helicopter's taking off for Newark. Suppose we fly over there and then drive back to New York. Anybody who might be following us could never get there in time." Mr. Drew smiled. "That's an excellent plan." He praised his daughter. He went to buy the tickets, while Nancy hurried to the women's lounge for Lola Flanders and then led the way to the helicopter. The trip was made in an hour. When they arrived at Eloise Drew's apartment, the lawyer took his sister aside to ask if Lola Flanders might stay at her apartment temporarily. under the circumstances, it seemed best to keep her in hiding until the riddle of the strange telegram had been solved. Eloise Drew was delighted with the arrangement. Nancy was to stay there also. Mr. Drew said that he had to return to his office at once and would catch an afternoon plane to River Heights. After luncheon, Nancy said she would like to do an errand. Actually, she wanted to talk to Captain Smith and tell him what she had found out in England. Miss Drew also said that she had an errand which must be taken care of. "Do you mind staying alone?" Nancy asked Mrs. Flanders. The woman laughed. It was the first time Nancy had heard her laugh, and it reassured the girl as to Lola Flanders' condition. "Go ahead," Mrs. Flanders said. "You know, I feel like a new person. I have no more fears." Nancy and her aunt left the apartment together. Miss Drew said that she would not be gone more than 20 minutes, and Nancy could take all the time she needed. They separated, and Nancy went at once to call on Captain Smith. "You back so soon?" The officer shook his head. "Well, what's the news?" After hearing Nancy's story, Captain Smith looked at her in admiration. He said no detective or police officer could have done the job better, and probably not so fast. "There's still a great deal to be done," Nancy said. "Have you found out any more about the Tristram booking agency or Lola Flanders' dividend checks?" "I have some news that will amaze you," the officer said. "The Tristram booking agency has gone out of business." "It has?" Nancy exclaimed. The police officer said that the firm had folded up overnight. It had left no forwarding address. "There has been no mail for Lola Flanders for 2 days, the captain stated. "I was just about to telephone one of the companies from which the dividend checks come to find out if they had been notified of any change of address. I'll do it now." He put in a call to an oil company. Presently, he received the information he wanted. Hanging up, he turned to Nancy and said, "Well, that's a break. The new address is the Hotel Coles in this city." Before Nancy could do any more than show her surprise, the captain was placing another call. This time it was to the hotel desk. He learned that a young dancer named Lola Flanders had registered there the day before. Nancy told Captain Smith about the fake telegram, directing her to go to the Hotel Coles. "But you didn't do it?" the man asked, a look of disapproval crossing his face. "No." "I'm glad," the officer said. "It's a low-class place." Captain Smith said he would send a detective to the hotel at once to check on Lola Flanders. He would have another man check to find out who had sent the telegram. "Please call me at my aunt's home if you find out anything," Nancy requested. The officer promised to do so, and Nancy returned to the Drew apartment. She rang the bell, and instantly the door was opened by Aunt Eloise. The woman's eyes had a frightened look in them. "Nancy, Lola Flanders is gone!" she cried. End of chapter 23.